we go. Up and out and feet flexed, head back. Yeah, it's looking all right. Have we started? Sorry. Due to lockdown, Melbourne's iFly tunnel's been closed and I haven't been able to practice. My back flying. Can we run that music again, please? Hello and welcome. On today's agenda, we have Melbourne's lockdown number 4 and the jealousy other states are having for not experiencing the mandated holidays. We have an award-winning filmmaker will be talking to us about her recent success in capitalising on the pain experienced in Melbourne's lockdowns. And on the debating table today is the COVID vaccinations being made available to young people, while people with a disability, people in aged care and all the workers associated with them are left waiting with their sleeve up. But first, let's take a look at what people in other states around Australia are saying about Melbourne's 4th lockdown. Harry Houdini from Padlock Box in New South Wales writes, "I have been working hard for 18 months now without a break. I think it's not fair Melburnians get regular lockdown holidays and are now up to number 4. They haven't worked for about 30% of the last 18 months. Sorry, Harry, for the fact that your life has not been interrupted with lockdowns. But the pandemic is not over yet. You could always move down here for a couple of years, hey?" Alice from Wonderland in the Northern Territory says, "A duchess once told me that if everybody minded their own business, the world would go round a lot faster. Melbourne is having all these lockdowns is slowing down the world. Get out of this rabbit hole and get a move on." Thanks for that, Alice, but I think your Duchess also remarked that everything has a moral, if only you can find it. I suggest you go back to your rabbit hole and take another look. Although some Australians are expressing their disgruntlement at various decisions our leaders have been making, I would like to draw your attention to Australia's comparative world success in combating the COVID-19 pandemic and how observers are accrediting this success. As at the 9th of June 2021, the World Health Organization posted a global total of, how do I say this? Break it. 173,674,509 confirmed cases. And with regards to deaths, there was a total of 3,744,408. The Americas contributed to 39% of these confirmed cases and Europe to 31%. To put that into context, by comparison, Australia has contributed to 0.017% of the total confirmed cases. Our sisters across the waters in New Zealand have an even lower statistic of 0.0013%. It's not surprising then that world leaders are looking to us for an explanation and a way forward. Wikipedia.org notes the following events and decisions made by various Australian governments explains our success. So firstly, the devastating bushfires of the Christmas season to 2019 to 2020 across both Victoria and New South Wales kept tourists at bay. This reduced the chances, or at least delayed the chances, of the SARS virus to hitchhike its way into the country from unsuspecting other countries. Secondly, it is said that the early intervention to close off the borders to our little island to the global community added further restraint. The internal border closures between states could controversially, don't blame the messenger, controversially be stated as a positive combat too. The third factor accredited to Australia was the rapid, large workforce increase of contact tracers. You may recall the internal debates and complaints about this matter, but it goes to show the government will only act when enough people complain. This combined with the short, intense, or for Victoria and more specifically Melbourne, long intense, lockdowns has been helpful. And finally, while this might be a hard pill to swallow for some Australians, on a global comparative scale, we have a high level of trust for our government, both federal and state, which has worked in our favour. If you're in doubt of this claim, please look to our United States relatives who put up with Trumpitis? Inflammation of the Trump, yes. For 12 months, leaving the reigning President Biden having to try to unite the division across his country while trying to vaccinate his people against the voices calling for them to do whatever they bloody well please or it's an infringement of their rights. And they quote the First Amendment. Actually, if they Googled it, the First Amendment only relates to 5 areas, those being freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, the right to assemble, and the right to petition government. But I suppose most of Americans haven't read that bit because it doesn't support their claims to rights as opposed to freedoms. Poor old Mr. Biden's had to resort to bribery to get his people to step up to vaccinations. I believe he's offering free tickets to the NRL. Imagine that, having to bribe your people. Whilst Australians have expressed some hesitancy to vaccination, we are slowly putting our tail between our legs and rolling up our sleeves in the name of the greater good to protect our family, our Australian family. Okay, moving on to something lighter, my next guest is an award-winning filmmaker. Last year, she picked up the award for Best Film in a competition to recreate a piece of art from the National Gallery of Victoria, and this year has just walked away with the Best Production for the 4th Lockdown Blues competition. Please welcome Miss Sophia Cutt. Do Zoom. All right, let's get her up here. Okay. Okie dokies. All righty. Sophia, welcome. Thank you for making yourself available for us today. I see you have your trophies with you, and is that a bonus one? Would you like to briefly tell us about these, please? Certainly. As mentioned, last year I won the award for Best Film for reproduction of a piece of art. It was a competition set up by the National Gallery of Victoria and ABC Radio Melbourne. And what they invited us to do was to take a photograph of ourselves reproducing a piece of art, posing as a piece of art. Yeah? And because it was a photograph, and I live alone, I couldn't take a photograph of myself, I decided to make a film. And because I was the only entrant in that film category, I won the prize. Oh, a one-horse race. Yes, the award I recently claimed was for Best Production, and that was for Melbourne's lockdown number for Angels Discussed. Now, you said the other award was a one-horse race. Well, this one was better because there was no race. I just decided it was a Best Production. Oh, okay, I suppose. So, what's the third trophy for? Well, this was the actual trophy that I won in 1980. I was in the junior team of Broadmeadows nursing cadets of the St John Ambulance Brigade, as it was called at the time. And I was in the junior team level competition with my fellow, there were 3 of us, 12 and 13-year-olds. And we won the first level of the 2-level competition race that year for our age group. Oh, great. And how many teams did you beat? In our category of junior team, we were the only one. A one-horse race then? Yes, but it was 5 categories. We had to do 5 categories, which is like a pentathlon. We had to do a roller bandaging. We had to do fracture management. There was a 10-minute first aid scenario, a 10-minute nursing home scenario, and orals. We had to answer questions. Like, that's quite intense for 12, 13-year-olds. Like, there's a pentathlon just there. So, but my point is, life is a one-horse race. You know, except for maybe job interviews, buying a house at auction, or finding a husband. Like, otherwise, life is just you. You're racing you to the finish line, to jump in the box, be it to be buried or cremated, whatever your personal goal is. So my point is, life is a one-horse race. Even in sport, be it football, basketball, netball, gymnastics, badminton, anything like that, we're always asking, well, did you do your personal best? And especially when you don't win, your PB is quite important. Like, did you do your personal best though? And so even in a one-horse race, your personal best is important. Okay, great, thanks. Okay, so let's now talk about your 2020 win for Best Film. And we're going to show a little bit of it in a moment. It was where you recreated a piece of art. Can you just briefly tell us why? Sure. So we'd just gone into our first Melbourne lockdown, a period of time I called my maternity leave. And maternity leave, like, why? Well, I'd never had a baby, so this type of leave was never on my agenda. And as a self-employed businesswoman, I probably could never afford myself to go onto maternity leave anyway. And the government offered some funding, the JobKeeper allowance. So I thought, well, here's an opportunity. Why not reassess my business, see where I'm going, and give birth to something new? I'm sorry I asked. Yes, so ABC Radio Melbourne and the NGV invited us to recreate a piece of art from a prescribed list that included the Mona Lisa and Ned Kelly and Horse and a few others. And I chose a sculpture called Speed, and it was celebrating its 99th anniversary last year. Speed? Okay, sounds appropriate. So let's take a little bit of a look at this film. And leg is out, arms are up. I didn't look to see how her arms were. Oh! Okay, let me double check what her arms were doing. They're straight out, straight out. Okay, attempt number 7, I think. There we go, on front of the ball. And we're going again. And the headpiece isn't going to last too long. And the hands were out like that. Oh, that's not too bad for an old chook. Let me just double check the photo, make sure I'm getting it right. Oh, my headpiece has fallen off though. Let's hope I've got it right because my headpiece has fallen off. Let's have a look. Hands are flat, below the chin. The arms need to be below the chin. And as close to that as I can get. Let's go one more time. One more time. Let's get the headpiece back on. Headpiece back on. Okay. Taking position again. Front of the ball. Oh, come on, headpiece. You can do better than that. That's it. That's it. Arms out below, face. Oh. 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 Get the leg up. Oh. That's the headpiece. Oh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, there goes the headpiece. I hope you got it in that shot. I hope that worked. You'll have to wait and see what the photo looks like afterwards. Thanks for your support. Okay, well done. So tell me again, how many entrants were there for this award? Well, none, because the actual competition asked for a photograph of yourself, and I couldn't do a photograph because my camera doesn't have the remote control function, and so I couldn't actually enter that competition. And like when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade, so I made a film instead. Well, Sophia, I can see why your life is a one-horse race. You are running on a completely different track to the rest of us. Exactly. I think so too. Thanks for that acknowledgement. Okay, moving right along. Tell us about your recent award for Best Production. Can you tell us why you did this? Sure. So in this film, Melbourne's lockdown number 4, Angels Discussed, I wanted to highlight the impact of the lockdowns on our family members. And this lockdown was a special one for me because it was my quarantine lockdown. First maternity leave, then quarantine leave. How do you come up with such stupid ideas? So on day 2 of our lockdown, which was a 7-day lockdown, which we now know was a 14-day lockdown, on day 2 I found out that 6 days earlier I was at a cafe that overlapped with somebody else at the cafe who later tested positive for COVID. So within that 6 days they tested positive. So the contact tracing had taken it back to that cafe. They would have been infectious. I was at the cafe at the same time they were at the cafe. So that was declared as a tier 1 exposure site. I was now having to quarantine for 14 days. It's 14 days from the date of contact. So given I was already up to day 6, I had eight more days of quarantine. And given we were already in a lockdown, I think that made that a bit easier for me as well. So what happened then was that I had to have a test on initially, which was the day I found out, day 6, and I tested negative, and day 13, and I tested negative, and on day 14 I got the phone call from the health department asking a few more questions and then clearing me from quarantine so that on day 15 I could return to single layer lockdown. The hardest thing though was that I had to contact all the people I'd seen in my 6 days before knowing that I had been exposed to say, hey, guess what? Maybe I've given you COVID-19. So they needed to test and isolate, and they were just waiting until my negative test came through. So once my first negative came through, they were then okay to carry on with our initial lockdown. But that's the hardest thing. It's like, hard enough telling somebody that you know, I'm sorry, I may have exposed you to COVID-19 just by being with you and not knowing and having been at this cafe. But if I actually did give them COVID-19 and they did get sick and potentially die, like, that's just hard to live with, I think. So how did you manage? I mean, you couldn't go out, you couldn't go shopping, you couldn't go for a walk, you couldn't do anything. A friend once said to me on her deathbed, it's times like this you find out who your friends really are. So whilst I did a grocery shop online, because I'd run out of cat food mostly, I couldn't get fresh things like roast chicken and fresh bread. So my mate Taya from a couple of doors down went shopping to get me some things and drop it at the front door. I'd run out of medicine that I'm giving my sick cat at the moment, and my friend Catherine went and picked up that medicine and dropped that to my front door. And what she also did is Taya went out to get us some Vietnamese dinner and dropped mine at the front door and gave Catherine hers, and Catherine sat in her car facing my front window, and I sat in my front room looking out through the window, and we had our dinner and we were chatting by telephone, and it was surreal. It was really, it's not something you'd think normally to do, like you wouldn't have to do something like that, but it was a really great way around the isolation of quarantine, and you know, just sitting there in the window and looking out when the grocery man came and made my delivery, and you know, I'm sitting at the window and just thinking he's like a little kid sitting at the window going, oh, hello, can't come out. Yeah. Yes, that does sound like a creative solution to a dire situation. So tell us about this film. Certainly. Using the doodly.com platform, I uploaded a photograph of my boy Angel, and we had a conversation through a French window about quarantine and lockdown and the impact on his social life. Okay, let's take a look at that now. imagination and the storytelling and the interaction with the cat, that just gives a new interpretation to the fact that you are in a race of your own. That was so great. I'd love to see more of your work. Where can I do that? Oh, how lovely of you to say. Thanks very much for that. Well, I'm in a place of transition at the moment. I'm currently completing film number 100 and Oh, great! What's that one about? This film we're making is film number 100. Anyway, so back in 2019 when I undertook the Adobe Premiere Pro CC short course at RMIT, I set myself the goal of making 100 films for expanding my capacities in filmmaking and in editing. Ah, how wonderful. So within 2 years, you have made 100 films. That's like one a week with like 4 weeks holiday. That's a lot of films. Yes, there seems to be no end to my imagination. So most of my films, let me say that again, 64, my most viewable films, can be found on my website, www.jaguarproductions.com.au. However, I am in a position of transition, having, made 100 films for experience. I'd like to now see if I can actually start making some money out of my filmmaking. Oh, is that like through YouTube, hey? Well, no, I do have a YouTube channel that I upload my films onto and then carry across to the website. But YouTube as a monopoly for amateur filmmakers to build a portfolio don't actually make your money unless you've got millions of subscribers. And then once you've got millions of subscribers, then the advertisers want to know what you're doing. And what I don't like about that is that these people have supported you, your subscribers, your 2 million subscribers have been supporting you since the beginning, and then suddenly they're getting 3 or 4 advertisements they're gonna have to skip through in your 15-minute film. And it's to me, it's like selling your soul to the devil, or to advertisers. So I'm trialing a new way that if people paid a small amount, like $1 or $2 each time they came to my website or saw a film or something like that, then slowly money would trickle in, and that would be sufficient to keep the fox away from the door. Oh, you mean like Foxtel? No, nothing like Foxtel. I'm referring to the advertisers who like to get a free ride on the coattails of YouTubers. What I mean is that if I had 100 people paying $1 or $2 to come and see my film, then I'd make a bit of money. It's like fair trade coffee. It's like paying an art gallery or a museum or a zoo to go in, except the money's going directly to the artist. Oh, okay. But will it work? Who knows until you give it a try. It's like that, what was that tourism advertisement for Northern Territory that Daryl Summers did years ago? It had the caption of, "You'll never know if you never go." Or the other one I like is, "You build the mountain and they will come." Or the one that's usually accredited to Albert Einstein, which I don't think was his actually, but that says the definition of madness is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Yes, we get the picture. Okay, thank you very much for speaking with us today, and we wish you well in your future. Thanks for having me. And just as a final note of self-indulgence, please let me say, live long and prosper. Thanks. Okay, let's take a paying advertisement and we'll be right back after the break.